Welcome to the Catherine Vandome and Me podcast.
Hashtag hosts and the HQFM quiz and bingo software are proud to sponsor the Catherine Vandome and Me podcast. With HQFM quiz and bingo software, you can use this interactive quiz software at any venue. All you need is an internet connection. Go to hashtagquiz.co.uk for your free trial today.
Hello and welcome to Catherine Vandome and Me. And today I'm joined by a very talented guest who is a director, an actor, and he's also, most intriguingly, a puppeteer who worked for Cannon Hill Puppet Theatre. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce today the brilliantly talented Mr. John Hickey. Hello. John, how are you?
Hello. Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you, John. So I'm most intrigued about the puppetry. That's something that I'm sure everybody will want to hear about as well. But just tell us a little brief synopsis, John, about who you are and a little bit of your background, and then we'll take you forwards and backwards and hear lots more about you.
Yeah, great. Well, as you say, I'm a theatre director, an actor and puppeteer, but I'm also a musician as well. And over the years, I've been involved in all kinds of projects. So I started off in school plays and then went to Preston Drama Club for amateur dramatics. And that at the age of 13, I didn't decide. I knew that I was an actor and that's what I had to be. So when people are asking you what you want to be, it's not the first thing you say, because people go, oh, right, what's your backup plan? Well, I didn't have one. And eventually I went on to Rose Bruford College of Speech and Drama. And from there, my acting career began. And then it just goes in all kinds of different ways and led in an interesting route towards the puppeteering, which was not really something I'd ever planned. So I was always open to options. Initially as just a jobbing actor, you take what's available. I always really wanted to concentrate on theatre rather than film or television. And that was a conscious decision, but you never say no to things. However, that was what I focused on. And what led me to the puppeteering, I've done various things. I think early on, I'd established that I wasn't just an actor, because the course I did at Rose Bruford Drama College was community theatre arts. And that was fantastic. It gave a really good overview of all kinds of things you could do with theatre, not just straight plays, but devising with communities and making site-specific theatre, all kinds of different things, mask work and many aspects of theatre. Fantastic grounding. And from that, before I graduated, I got my first job and started out in theatre. And then things sort of, you've got to generate your own work at certain times. So founded a theatre company called Chilling Tales Theatre Company, and we went up to Edinburgh and toured and so on. And then the career progressed, jobs come, jobs go. I worked in a video studio for the youth service, ran that for a while. Then I was in a series of jobs. A lot of the work I've done was in schools theatre. So you go principally into primary schools and perform plays. And there you're doing 2 or 3 shows a day, 5 days a week, and then sometimes art centres at the weekend. So it's quite hectic. And what happened, I'm getting towards how I got into the puppetry. What happened was that I'd worked for a company in Wales, touring nationally, and that was an autumn tour. And they said, okay, after Christmas, we want you back. We'll get you in end of January, beginning of February, another rehearsal, another play, different cast. And I said, oh, great. Then things went a bit quiet, and eventually I rang up to find out where the script was. And in the office at the other end, there was this, has Paul not rung you? The tour had been cancelled. There was no job.
Oh, no.
Which these things happen. But when they happen, within days of you starting, I think it was about 2 weeks before, that you'd banked on that, you'd planned for that,
Yeah.
you'd not applied for any other work. And through a friend of a friend, a guy who was touring with a company ended up giving me a ring, and he'd got a better job, was leaving his job, and he'd offered to contact me to see if I was interested. So it was a very small puppet company, and they used glove puppets, and I started it. I was kind of thrown in very much at the deep end. There was no rehearsal time. We were in a booth, very much like traditional puppet theatre, a little bit like Punch and Judy, but a bit grander than that.
Oh, wow.
And the script was not brilliant, but I ended up working with a touring partner who was absolutely fantastic, and we became lifelong friends. And we bashed the show into shape and kind of made it work.
Brilliant.
But I think I'd no intention of becoming a puppeteer, and especially not doing any more puppetry, because this wasn't great quality. The puppets weren't great quality. But I was thinking about the next job and tracking the usual sources, and a job was advertised at Norwich Puppet Theatre, and I thought, what I'll do is I'll just apply and find out what puppetry is like elsewhere. I definitely don't want the job, and I don't want to go for an audition. So I thought they'd send me an information pack, I'd find out about them. They didn't. They just rang me up and said, come for an audition, and they said, come to Norwich. And I wasn't being coy, but I looked at it and said, I can't afford the train fare to Norwich. It was astronomical at the time. So they were very accommodating. This was really annoying me now, because I didn't want this job. And they said, oh, our director works in Birmingham. We checked out the rail fare. That's much cheaper. Go to Birmingham and he'll see you there. And I did, and I got the job, and I worked for Norwich Puppet Theatre, and that was amazing.
Wow.
They created fantastic puppets. They had their own theatre in a converted church, superb puppet makers, craftspeople. And the play I did, the script was written by Simon Painter, who worked at Cannon Hill Puppet Theatre in Birmingham. And so he was based there, auditioned me there. I got employed by Norwich. This was an excellent job. I mean, the show was superb. Fangs the Vampire Bat.
And we're going to come. We're going to come to that. No, you're all right. Thank you for giving a brief synopsis of of your plethora of work, John. And what I want to do now, obviously, you've got the directing. You've also indicated that you're doing writing as well. You've got music, puppeteering, and a wealth of talent there, which is just phenomenal. Which is a hybrid of these different talents is often needed as an actor. We often just say some people just give themselves the title role of an actor, but actually there's so many more skill sets that you have, John, which is what's intriguing about yourself. So what I want to do is take you right back, if that's okay with you, and back to childhood, John, because what I want to know is, first and foremost, where were you born? I believe you're local, like myself, Lancashire, but I just want to double check. First of all, where were you born, John?
I do like to tell people I was born in the workhouse. I was born in Sherry Green Hospital in Preston, which was a maternity hospital.
I was. That's good.
Yes,
yeah.
But it had been a workhouse many years before. So I like to tell people that. Yeah, so born and bred in Preston, where we lived out at Farrington, between Preston and Leyland in the first 10 years of my life. And then we moved to Penwitham for the next part of my life at home, you know. So
and back staying in childhood, John, before you go forward, because I know there's so much to get in, but in your childhood, which primary school, can I ask, did you go to?
I went to St Mary Magdalene's.
Nice.
Lower Penwitham. Yes.
Yes. Lovely. And back then, were your parents into production as well, or was this something, or siblings, anything like that, John?
No, there was no real immediate history of a kind of theatre background. My dad was from Dublin, and he'd married my mum from Preston. They'd met at his brother's wedding in Yardley Green in Birmingham, and they'd got together. And so my dad was a silversmith, a thing called a repoussé chaser, which is working with silver and hammer and punch. He's incredible craftsman, but
Wow.
more technical, artistic than performing. Although he was an amazing artist, and in his youth he'd been a violinist and played with Dublin Youth Orchestra. My mum played a little bit of piano, sang very well, but
Wow.
really in the creative arts, or didn't perform, except maybe at church, singing there, but not really, no performer's background in my family. I think I had a great uncle who had been an actor in Ireland, but there's no real connection there. So in some respects, it kind of came out of nowhere. And I remember at primary school, I was in the nativity plays when you start out and so on. I remember enjoying it. And then the last year at primary school, we did a play, and it was a proper script. And I was desperately trying to remember the name of this morning, but it was about Father Christmas and his assistant, and I played Father Christmas's assistant. So there were lines to learn and acting to do more than when you play the innkeeper in the nativity. And I did really enjoy that, but it hadn't quite got me yet.
And was this a script, John? Was this a script?
Yes, it was.
Full script.
Full script. Yeah, I've no idea who wrote it. I think it was probably one of those ones that does the rounds in schools, and they've been published, and they'll pay a fee to perform it. I've no idea who wrote it. I don't even know how long it was, but it had a good part, good lines, and I remember very clearly, I really got a lot from it. And then that was the last year at primary school. Then I went on to Cuthbert Main High School in Preston, which is combined into Our Ladies now.
That's where I went as well. My goodness.
Yeah.
So
it's a small world, isn't it?
It is.
And from there, that we did drama at secondary school. So there was a class as part of the curriculum. If only that was the case now. I think it's a big loss that it's not always part of the curriculum. But I had two inspirational drama teachers at secondary school. Rita Wordsworth was the second, and the first was Helena Morris. And by coincidence, I don't know if I think she'd left probably by the time you got there, but Helena Morris, by coincidence, yesterday I found this program from a play we did that she wrote, Helena Morris, called The Emperor's Rest. And funnily enough, it is another sort of nativity tale, but it was a really lovely play, and I think that was December 1974, Monday the 16th of December. But that was just one of the things that her drama class gave me. So each week, it was a weekly class, and I really thought, this is something. So that was 74. So I just turned 13 then, and I know that by the age of 13, I wanted to be an actor. So sometime in October, November, December 73, 74, sometime I knew that I was an actor. And I think that's the thing that I've said earlier. It wasn't that I wanted to be an actor. I discovered that's what I was. And I think for me, that's always been the difference. So, you often have conversations with people about what they want to do, with their lives, whether they're starting out or they're thinking of changing direction or not. And very often people in adult life, they don't really know what they want to do. And I had absolute certainty that I was an actor, and that's what I was going to do.
Fantastic. And was she a primary influence, John?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about that. She was an amazing person, incredibly lovely, and really gave us all something. So, most of the class wouldn't necessarily have wanted to become actors or take it further, but that isn't always what drama's about. It gives people, children and adults, quite a lot of confidence and ways of presenting yourself. You can go into social situations, you can improvise and so on, and kind of make it topical. And I think people can do that all their adult lives as well as in childhood. And it's undervalued, it really is. But she had something really special and certainly encouraged my talent, basically.
It sounds like she also saw something very special in you, John, because when the teachers are influenced, it's because they can see that you obviously had a great gift. And what sort of acting is your style? Are you comedy, straight acting, Shakespeare, or a hybrid of all of those? What's your natural gift, you think, John?
Well, I think as a jobbing actor, you have to turn your hand to everything. But certainly early on, I established that I was very good at comedy, and got a lot of roles like that early on. It's sort of in childhood and early career. But I'm also what would be known as a character actor. So you have to be very realistic, I think, particularly as an actor, performer, of what you've got and who you are. And I was never going to play the romantic lead. That's not a problem. They're not the interesting parts anyway. So I would often play several characters in a play, which is great because you've got to change all the time and bring in variety, you know. So I'd certainly say I've got a gift for comedy and character. But then through that, I've done all kinds of plays. I've done a lot of Shakespeare, and within the same production, I've done comedy and serious, and so on. So,
and what was a standout? What was a standout character that you've played, John, in that period of time?
Well, I played Henry V in Henry V.
Wow. Well, there's a standout. Not everybody can take on a role like that. So
no. Well, that's right. So that was a big role. And when we were rehearsing, the director, my good friend Derek Martin, mentioned that Henry has half the lines in the play. He says. Yeah. Awful. Now, in our edited version, it wasn't quite that, but it's a big part. But equally, I've done Romeo and Juliet, and we had a cast of 7. This was at this wonderful place called I Theatre down in Suffolk, which I was associated with for 14 years, and went backwards and forwards, off and on. Initially as an actor, then as a director, and a little bit of writing. And actually, I ran I Theatre for a while when the artistic director was on sabbatical, my great friend Tom Scott. I Theatre was a magnificent place. So wow. We did all kinds of things, comedy, open air shows at the castle, and all kinds of things there, you know. So
brilliant. And was this in your youth, or are you moving forward slightly?
I've moved forward a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So that was some of the sort of more professional work, but staying as a youngster, John. So you're starting to be influenced by this brilliant teacher at what was St Cuthbert Main High. And did she give you any sort of direction? Did you have to talk about what subject you want to choose and what you want to be? Was that something that happened to you in high school?
Well, not to a great degree at that point, because this was more or less when I got to high school. So really, we weren't kind of at the stage she was there. It was crucial to me, but we weren't really talking about careers or options.
Okay.
Very sadly, she left and went to another school, but she'd given me that good basis and grounding, and that led me to Preston Drama Club, and I joined the student group back then. And there, amongst other people, I met a lady called Rita Worswick, and she was leading the group at that point. We had several people. There was a wonderful lady called Audrey Hughes, who was just magnificent and taught me a lot, and many other people. So I joined as a student member. We met every Tuesday night, and then that kind of became my life outside of school. So I would go and do on the workshop day, so helping out in the workshop, and then on productions of the adult group, I would be selling programs, making tea, backstage, doing the lights, helping out with costumes. I did everything I could and spent as much time there as I possibly could. And I learned a lot of my craft there from very experienced amateurs, very gifted people, and the adults were very generous to the students group. And I think because I showed enthusiasm, I was really kind of brought in. And we did pantomime every year, which is just one of the best things you can do, you know, and sort of built up from chorus with 2 lines up to playing the comedy duo. Well, one half of the comedy duo. So that's, for me, that was a real kind of progression through that, and led me into things in my professional career with pantomime, and and so on. But
That's fantastic. Sorry, so the pantomimes, when did you start those, John? Because I just wonder if you and I have perhaps done some pantos together. I started when I was 9, so it was The Wizard of Oz. Were there any
Right.
particular roles, if you can remember, or any, like Julie Webster at the time was, when I was a Munchkin, for example, she was in there. Was there anybody, any particular people that you can remember who, you know, had a profound effect on you?
Yeah, well, all of those people had left, had arrived before I left, after I left. So I finished at the drama club in September 1980, which is when I got my place at drama college. So I was going right up the wire, and I was cast in a production. It's the only thing I think I've had to pull out of, because I got my place at drama college. So all of those people, Howard Stableford, Julie Webster, they arrived after me.
Right.
So I'm very old.
No, you're not. No, I just wondered if there was a crossover, because
Yeah.
Chris Canavan, I had Dermot Canavan on recently. Chris Canavan, his father was also, you know, highly esteemed actor in the circles. Is he somebody you work with, perhaps?
Yes, I certainly knew him, and we crossed over, and he was a great character. The people I remember, Don Stevenson was there for many. You must have known Don.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, he's brilliant man.
Amazing guy, and again very generous to me. They really treated me like an adult in the best possible way, you know, because I was only I could only join when I was 14. You couldn't join younger at that point, and it's the student group. But because I wanted to sort of learn everything, they took me in, and eventually I got parts in the adult productions. But at the age of 14, I didn't look anything like 14. You know, at the age of 19, I was offered a half fare on the bus, for example. You know, I look, I know it's hard to imagine now, but I looked very young, so it was difficult to get the kind of more adult roles in the main group. But they gave me roles, and you know, things like The Happiest Days of Your Life, where there's 2 school children representing the whole school in the play, set in it's a wartime play, and the boys' school are being evacuated to the girls' school, and the masters and mistresses have to go. So it's mostly about stuff in the staff room with the masters and mistresses, and comedy of the sexes, really. So myself and a girl represented the whole of the pupils in the school. You know? It's a good role. It's a good comedy, you know. Hopcroft Minor, the character was called.
Brilliant.
My character.
And how did that feel with your auditions? As I say, I chatted with Dermot about Preston Drama, because that was one of his mainstays, as was myself. A great place for, as you say, learning your craft, but also a great way to meet what I consider to be highly esteemed semi-professionals. Now, the only difference between a professional and an amateur is one gets paid and one doesn't. But in my opinion, particularly in this particular area, Preston Drama, there's a lot of very, very superbly gifted and talented people who could easily have been professional. And as you say, they were so generous spirited to people like us when we were little, in encouraging us to come up the ranks. And as Dermot did as well, we all have learned a wealth of gifts from them. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's sort of a case in point in terms of crossover, because when I arrived at Preston Drama Club, the person leading the group was a lady called Rita Worswick, and she was really good, treated us like equals, taught us a lot. That's where I started with voice production and stagecraft and so on. Although Helena Morris, who I was talking about earlier, left, the teacher they appointed instead was Rita Worswick. So then she came to Cup at Maine and became my drama teacher at school, as well as at Preston Drama Club.
Wow, that's good.
School, I had to remember to call her Miss Worswick, because I knew her as Rita, you know. So we had a quick chat when she arrived. She said, "Please remember to call me Miss Worswick." And I said, "I will, Rita." I mean, yes. And she was great. So there was that crossover between the playhouse and school, which kept it going, you know. And she already knew me, so again she treated me with great respect and valued me, you know, in drama.
And as I say,
share
John,
that.
you must have had superb gift in order for that to be the case, because when they see something in you, you know, they really try and encourage it. So you obviously shone, you know, which is just incredible. So even as a youngster, as you say, age 14, you were obviously starting to come into your own. You knew in your heart, which most entertainers do, it seems to be the only subject where you just know that this is where you want to be and what you want to do. And
before I discovered that, I didn't, you know, when you're little, people ask you what you want to be. And in the 1960s, it was okay to say you wanted to be an engine driver because there were steam trains, you know, and you'd fob off older relatives with things like that. But I had absolutely no idea, because I wasn't good at anything. I certainly wasn't stupid, but I wasn't gifted academically. I wasn't good at sport. I hadn't found my thing, you know, and it was really at Cuthbert Main with Helena Morrison and Rita Worswick that I thought, oh, no, this is something I can actually do. And that it was latent within me, but then they brought out more and taught me, you know, and I learned techniques and so on. But I think that's one of the things, you know, I'd say everybody can act, but and everybody can kind of learn things, but I do think you have to have some sort of inbuilt talent as well. So I think everybody should do drama and try drama, work with it. And it's good for all sorts of reasons, you know, for a social life, for therapy, for finding things out about yourself. But I suppose there's a latent talent that they found and brought out. I think, you know, it's difficult to say things like that because, you know, I think I'm quite a humble person, but you can also have to acknowledge that you have gifts or abilities or things within you. And certainly I was lucky enough that people around me recognized that and gave it value.
And how did you feel in yourself, John? Were you a confident child, or some people are quite shy underneath? The shy on stage and then the shy. I always was confident off and on stage. Were you? Did you have that confidence? You seem a confident gentleman.
Yeah, I do, don't I? Yeah. I was very shy as a child. I mean, I had friends who had a great family life. You know, my mum and dad and two sisters and an older sister, younger brother. Very happy home life. But I wasn't particularly confident or out there. And I found, if I'm honest, Cuthbert Main a difficult school to be at. Primary school was great. But I found it difficult to Cuthbert Main, and it was definitely not the happiest years of your life, you know.
And can you say why, John? Can you say why?
Well, it was all kinds of things. It was a big place back then. There were 1,750 pupils there, and not quite enough teachers, and they just kept us moving. I remember that very clearly. We moved classrooms after every class. And we're just in the corridors, walking on the right, you know, with people at the junctions. It almost the teachers.
We were like traffic, weren't we?
Absolutely. And I'm sure it's just to keep us moving, because if we knew we had power, we would have revolted, you know. We would have come to go. But they just kept us moving and kept that sort of discipline. There were good teachers, but overall, I was kind of lost in there.
Yes, I felt the same, John, so I empathize with what you're saying, and I describe it, because I'm only petite, as like being Alice in Wonderland. It was so huge of a venue, as you say, as well. And it's different for everybody. Everybody has a different experience, but maybe also, John, that people like you and I who enjoyed drama, there was only that one niche, maybe 4 hours a week, if that, in that particular field. And if that's your go-to area, then I think people like you and I maybe struggle with the sitting down and the history and the geography and the subjects perhaps that we're not so drawn to. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's true. I think the problem it was that we were you were assessed when you got there. I didn't do the 11 plus. They just abandoned that. So some people could sit the entrance exam to the grammar school or Preston Catholic College or whatever. But they sort of made an assessment, and then you were set at that level. So there were 3 streams, A, B, and C, and there were levels of intelligence. And within those, there were groups, and I was the bottom of the A stream. But that was like for everything. So it didn't acknowledge that I was terrible at maths and chemistry, but very good at English. Homogenized into this single layer, that's how intelligent you are. And it doesn't acknowledge that you're good at some things and others. So that was the kind of thing. I was also very little myself and looked much younger than my years. So I'm not going to say I was bullied, but it wasn't a pleasant environment, and people, my peers and some teachers sort of disregarded me. And then occasionally you flicker through. We got a new English teacher who really encouraged me because she could see my English was good. But then if you're rubbish at chemistry, the chemistry teacher hates you, and it's really not your fault. I'll be honest. I think it's their fault, but you can't articulate that when you're 13. You know, if I don't understand it, that you're a bad teacher. But they, you know, they didn't see it like that, and they're beleaguered as well. You know, they had, you know, lots of pupils to deal with. Fortunately, they didn't have league tables or things like that. But there were a lot of, I would say, journeymen teaching in my time at Government Main. They had the same lesson. They taught it year after year. That you know, and if you got it, you got it. If you didn't, you didn't. And there were good teachers, there were bad teachers, but I was lucky with a couple of great English teachers, and as I said, the two drama teachers. You know,
and they do say, John, that if you are passionate about a subject or subjects, then it's it's natural. So same as you, drama and English were the subjects I loved as well. And if you're passionate about those subjects, then they're easy. So can you imagine how easy it is? Like, my brother's an Oxford graduate from mathematics. My mum worked in a bank, and I can't add up to save my life. And I never enjoyed it. Never thought there was any need for Pythagoras theorem whatsoever. And then you learn very quickly that if you don't get your maths to match your English grade, then you're going to struggle moving forward. So would you say, what John, in your wisdom and experience, would you say something that you would, in the system that we live in, because it's not too dissimilar today, what would you put forward in the education system as some perhaps good ideas to help students today in your shoes?
Well, I think the main problem is that certainly at higher levels, at government level and so on, and the tinkering around it, that STEM is presented as the thing: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And that is fundamentally stupid to say that that's education, because they're trying to say, oh, you'll make more money if you're in STEM. You know, you make more money in engineering or maths or whatever. So the arts don't make money. Well, first of all, education and life isn't all about making money.
Yeah.
I haven't made a great deal of money in my life, but what I've done is take theatre to people, both as adults and as children. You know, you go into a primary school and do a play, you transform people. Now, that's because the teachers are working there every day, chipping at the cold face. But we went in, we did one show, and a little girl, as they did, came to talk to me afterwards. And she was amazing and articulate and fantastic. And then she went off, and the teacher came up to me and he said, I just wanted to let you know that girl hasn't spoken to anybody this year.
Wow.
You know, and so he'd been chipping away every day. I'm not taking all the credit, you know, and just working, and they were giving her space and time, and, you know, working with her in the classroom and out. But then something like a play, which you think, you know, many people in government at the moment are saying the arts have no value. So I got paid a dreadful wage for that job, but the job was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. And then you get one thing like that, where with the support of the teacher over the whole year, just needed that little thing, and she came out of herself. Now, it may be the next day she went back into herself, but it's the start, and things like that happened all the time. And with theatre for adults, it's not always just an entertainment. There's nothing wrong with just making people laugh. I mean, the value of that can't be calculated. I was actually directing a play, a comedy. I can't remember the title of it. But the morning before we were due to open, the two aeroplanes crashed into the Twin Towers. And one of the cast had worked for Bundesbank, who had headquarters in the Twin Towers, and she lost colleagues that day. So we talked about it, and we talked about it with, this was at theatre, which I mentioned earlier, professional theatre down in Suffolk, and discussed with the artistic director, with the cast. And what we decided was we'd do the play, and if nobody came along, we'd go home. but if the audience turned up, we'd do the play. Now, I know other people that night that cancelled their performance, either a first night or whatever, but we said we'll do it. And all the audience who'd booked tickets came up. One or two more people turned up on the door, and they all said, we really need a comedy this evening. And they needed something to keep them going, because it affected us globally, didn't it? You know, so we weren't being glib or trite or anything, but we said we will be here, and if they come, we'll perform. And they absolutely needed it. But you know, plays, just doing a play can change somebody's life or give them an idea or a thought that leads them forward. So I've gone a long way from the question. I know I have.
No, it doesn't matter, because what you actually answered the question beautifully, John. That's the truth. And you have explained very succinctly that we are heading into a world where we are not having the freedom of expression, because theatre grants us the ability to be free, to liberate ourselves, to make choices, to think. An actor has to think why they're going on stage, what they're doing when they're there, and why they have to leave. You know, conventionally in Shakespeare, where you've got characters like Puck, where they're darting in and out. So you've got to understand the mechanism. And as much as, for example, my very academic elder brother is great at mathematics, one has to also say, well, somebody like yourself and I mean, he's great at drama as well, so he's got both. But conventionally, somebody who's into IT or whatever, they will struggle perhaps to audition or whatever, I call it auditions, to interview, I should say, for a standard job. So we would perhaps have a much better ability to open the door, walk in and say, hello, you'd like to, you know, hopefully, you know, we would be able to sell ourselves better. Whereas somebody who is purely academic, purely focused on computing or something like that, may struggle more, and also socially. And we only have one life, John, I'm sure you agree, looking back on the wealth of things you've done. We should have that opportunity to explore the creative field. And Gillian Lynn, very brilliantly, in reflection on your answer, said she learnt differently. Gillian Lynn, the choreographer from Cats, said very, very clearly, I learnt by with movement. So we all learn in a different manner. So as a dancer, she learnt through watching somebody move. And for you and I, maybe we also learn visually as well, instead of perhaps, you know, by listening. So we've all got those different skill sets, but we're sat behind a desk and we're being directed from young childhood. And I think we need to push through that and give the voice back to the children. Would you agree?
Well, that's right. I think so, absolutely. And so you know, the acronym STEM, some people add the A into it, becomes STEAM. So that's arts. And then when you add that, you're kind of getting to go, well, shouldn't we be teaching everything, which is what we should? But I add, instead of STEAM, I call it STEAMY, and put an I on the end. And the I is for imagination. So you can teach science, technology, arts, mathematics. That more or less, arts covers history and so on. That more or less covers it. But it's you know, we don't need, because we've got mobile phones, we don't need to know the date that Henry VIII came to the throne. We can look it up if we need the knowledge. So what we need to know is where to find it. But then the key thing which comes into the imagination is critical thinking. And that's the thing we most need to teach. So you can read an article online or see a news report on TikTok or wherever, and then begin to understand the sources and the verification. And we need this with fake news and fake videos at the moment more than ever. So the imagination allows children to learn and explore and find in their own way and create. And you can create something in history class that isn't just learning dates and books and so on. And then the imagination also, you learn the critical thinking, as I say, so you can verify things yourself. So you can look at a Wikipedia article and go, oh, this, you know, English mustn't be ignored, because you need to understand grammar and syntax and spelling in order to go, this is written very badly, or there's no citations. You know, even understanding what a citation is, we should be teaching that in kind of imagination and creativity as well. And And that's I think the imagination aspect is the thing that's missing, and responding to the individual needs rather than the national curriculum and the league table, which teachers have to hit now, where they just need everybody to pass. So this is a generalization, but it's a lot of teaching is about giving them the answers they're likely to get in the exam without understanding what the answers mean. That's
100%.
impression.
100%, John. And also, I'm sure you're aware as well that we're not writing as much anymore.
No.
Now, when we physically write, not only do we have, as you quite rightly said about imagination, you've then got the expansion of writing a book, writing a story, using your own imagination, drawing your own life experiences. But most importantly, you have individuality. And that's what we're losing as well through the computer age. So individuality and logical thinking, apparently in the terms of the brain mechanics, when we use a pen and page, but I don't believe we are machines. I believe we're human beings with multiple different abilities, talents, and strengths and weaknesses. And we need to be a community, and we need to understand that there's the carpenter over there. Well, it's important that he learns woodwork because he's going to be building the tables, for example. Tables aren't always about mathematics. And then there's people like you and I who don't enjoy the subject of mathematics. And Ken Dodd and Jimmy Carr also felt the same. And it's it's encouraging different people in society to have their strengths.
But this room, which has been built up over 42 years, is a music recording studio. So it's filled with creativity. So yes. Behind me, it's preposterous. I've got 3 television monitors with different things on each screen, which is an integral part of the studio. So I can have the recording program is software, and you get the tracks of what you recorded on the screen, and then we've got different instruments which make actual noises.
Wow. So this is your recording studio, John. Yes, so we're jumping into that now. So I think what I'm hearing you say is there's greatness definitely with the technological advancements, without unquestionably, but also we need to make sure that we also have the basic skills, the fundamental basics.
You still need a pen and a paper, and you still need to talk to people and relate to them and get into the real world and get off just looking at that, which is a lot. I'm not saying I'm not. We're all doing it, but it's about interacting with people. And certainly theatre and performing can be brought into every subject anyway, as ways of doing it. You can illustrate history with drama, and you can explore history books by bringing the text out and so on. And I do think that imagination and creativity is what we need. But it isn't, even if you look at the engineering side, I know my friend was deputy head at a primary school which had a rural catchment. And particularly the boys, some of them, they were not what teachers would call academically gifted, so they can easily be discounted. But a lad of 9 can strip down his dad's tractor and rebuild it.
Wow.
And he hasn't learned that in a classroom, and that's what he's going to need. That's what he's going to be doing for the rest of his life.
Yes.
But if you put him in an engineering class, he might struggle, because it's done with words and textbooks and so on.
Like we said, the different ways of learning, visual, physical. Yeah. And I think from what you're saying as well, academic, the actual word itself as an English master as well, means of no practical use. So not everybody feels that way, but I do think quite rightly so that my parents' generation were given cooking skills. I'm not saying that women want to be defined as all working in the kitchen, and there was a little bit of that going on, but at the same time there was fundamental basic skills there. And we live in a throwaway community with electronic devices in one hand, and we're not learning to sew and cook and do basics, men and women, of course, which is needed for costumier work within the theatre, for example. So there's so many multiple disciplines within our most excited form. So for you personally, you were at Preston Drama Club. You learnt multiple skills, backstage, front of stage, which is a great wealth of gifts for you moving forward. And then what happened then, John? You then went to audition for Rose Bruford, is that right?
Yes, that's right. Just thinking about people I've worked with at Preston Drama Club, aside from the great people, some of whom carried on for many years, I crossed paths with a young man called Gregory Doran, who was an actor who went on to become the artistic director of the Royal Shakespeare Company. So we were on stage together when we were teenagers, and then his career went on. He moved over to directing totally rather than a hybrid. I've acted and directed and kept both going. But yeah, so I'm very proud to say we did Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Greg Doran was Joseph, and I was Benjamin, the youngest of the brothers.
The little one. Oh,
yeah. But I got a song. I got a solo song. You know. So
yeah.
Quite good.
Brilliant.
Really. And that was an excellent production. You know, it's one of those standout. That was the student production that year. We did one a year, and Greg was head and shoulders, but the whole cast were superb. The lighting was good. The costumes were great. And
this was at Preston Drama Club, John?
Preston Drama Club, yeah, absolutely.
And what year would that be?
That probably about 1976, I would say, 75, 76, something like that.
Fantastic. Was it all children, if you were the littlest?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It was the student drama group. So I can't remember when in that category you were classed as an adult member. Greg was in his last year or so. He was getting ready to go away to university and so on. So we crossed over, and then he left and I carried on, you know. But the cast was superb. We had amazing cast that year, you know. And we did some very good productions when I was there. But by that stage, certainly, I knew that I was going to be an actor. So I got enough A-levels, CSEs, O-levels and CSEs, as they were back then, to be able to go to drama college, but I was too young. So I left Cup at Maine and went to Catholic College, Preston Catholic College, sixth form. And so I had to be 18 or over to get into drama college. So I'd already got the qualifications I needed, but I really wasn't very mature, wasn't ready to go to work. So I went to sixth form, and where Gregory Doran had gone, and he had a great Shakespeare career there. They had a big tradition of doing a big Shakespeare production, which was directed by English teacher Arthur Malone, who was another great influence on my life. So I kind of plunged into that for 2 years. Academically, I didn't really do anything, and I got dreadful results in my A-levels, but that wasn't my motivation. I just needed to be 2 years older. I wasn't ready to go out and work, but what I met was a group of friends at Catholic College who were also into theatre. We essentially ran the stage. We had a proper stage and auditorium. And so I took my skills from the Playhouse and applied them in there. And I learned from my contemporaries there, and a group of friends who I'm still friends with now, and amazing skills and talents. And then I got to the end of sixth form, did miserably in my A-level results. And this was the bit where I'd for the first time in my life, I think I'd actually messed up without knowing it. And I was kind of looking around at what was happening around me. Everything was very good. And then we got to the end of sixth form, and I thought, oh, I think I was meant to apply to go on somewhere else after this. I was meant to apply to drama club, and I hadn't done. And I don't really know what happened. It was just one of those things. So I ended up working for a year in a jeweler's shop. And then
you lost out on going.
It was too late. Avoiding all the swear words. I'd messed up. So it was not my gap year, it was my mess up year. You know, and it was awful. It was awful. I mean, I hated working in the shop, the 9 to 5, and was the repair clerk. So everybody just came in to complain that year. They brought in the jewellery or watches to repair, and then it wasn't there when they came back. It's not my fault. I'm just sending off. It was awful. I carried on at Preston Drama Club, so that was good. And then I started applying in the autumn to drama college and auditioned for as many as I could. I was kind of doing okay, but not really getting there. And I auditioned for Guildford, Birmingham, one or two others, and Rose Bruford. And I didn't get anything for Birmingham. Guildford Drama College put me on a reserve list for the next year. Rose Bruford, I thought it was a good audition, and they sent me a letter saying, we thought you were very good. We think you need more experience in the world. Apply again next year. So I'm thinking, oh no, 2 years.
John.
It was awful. I mean, this is one of the big low points, and I didn't really lose faith in myself, but I knew I'd kind of messed up, and then, so that would have been, I think, the January, that Rose Bruford audition, and things had come to a head in the jeweller's shop. The manager, I was 18, and the manager was only 23, and we had a bit of a clash, and he'd been promoted quite quickly. I'm not blaming him, but we had an argument, and I quit. And I had absolutely nothing, I left that day, and he paid me the rest of the money I was owed. And I thought, right, what am I going to do now? And I sat at home for a couple of days thinking, and the phone rang, and it was Stuart Bennett from Rose Bruford College, the course director of the Community Theatre Arts course. And he said, John, we have a place for you. You start in 2 weeks.
Oh my goodness, John.
Yeah.
So you had only 1 year of auditions, is what you're saying. And was that the Guildford School or the Guildford School of Acting? Which was
Guildford School of Acting? Yes.
Yeah, that's where I went, the Guildford School of Acting. But I did audition for Rose Bruford, and I didn't get through. And they said to me, "What do you think you are, a ballerina?" And I said, well, actually, yes, as well. Yes. But so they also said, come back with life experience.
I absolutely felt I'd failed, but I learned that it didn't bother or deter me. So that's why I'm quite happy to use the word failure, because when you go to professional auditions, almost all of them you don't get. That's the way it is. But I think that's what makes you an actor, not somebody who wants to be an actor, because you don't care that you haven't got it. You move on to the next job. And
well
there's
done.
Plenty of examples in my career where I didn't get that, but it meant that I got that, which led to even more work and so on. So,
and you never gave up. You've got an indomitable spirit, John, which not everybody has. A lot of people, especially
most people quit. They don't last the first year. I'd say most of my contemporaries coming out of drama college, didn't amount to anything in the theatre or television world. But some of us keep going, and I think if you've got the talent to back up when you get the job, keeping going is what sustains your career. And
personability as well, John. You're obviously very personable. I was discussing with another actor as well that it's a lot to do with your time, timeliness, the way that you conduct yourself with others. There's all those multiple personality traits that are absolutely essential when somebody wants to work with you again, basically. And you obviously have those gifts, and you've been a jobbing actor, a working actor all through your life, which is just incredible. As you say, not everybody has that. So so you went to Rose Bruford. What would you say you got from that particular tuition and that particular school? What were the highlights at Rose Bruford, John?
Well, it was a great course. I think it was a very small place. There were 3 courses, 2 3-year and 1 2-year course, and there were only 175 students at the college. It's much bigger now, and they have sites all over the place and so on, but we were crammed into a small building. We had a couple of classrooms elsewhere, the United Reformed Church and so on, out at Sidcup, and we were a bit apart. I think maybe like Guildford as well. Mountain View, RADA, E16 were all in London, and we were SE9, the last postcode out there. It was in Lamorby Park, the big house where Rose Bruford was. So we felt a bit separate, and that was good. But there was the technical theatre arts course where they trained stage managers and lighting directors, costume, a brilliant course, and we worked with them all the time. There was the acting degree course, which was not what I want. Now that's where you needed the academic side, but I deliberately.
So forgive me, John, to go back.
Yeah.
So what did you audition for? Because I think I auditioned for the acting course,
Yeah.
which was very almost very classical, and they made it very clear at the time that musical theatre wasn't particularly welcome. And I understand that, because obviously there's you know, a conflict between the RSC perhaps and musical. And in fact, my dissertation I wrote about could musical theatre ever be considered high art, because we had Jonathan Pryce in Miss Saigon, and I used that as a but you're obviously what I consider to be a classical actor, a you know, maybe I can't say proper actor without insulting myself, but the main thing is classical actor, classical trained actor. And was that what you auditioned for? You didn't go for the acting course then?
I didn't go for the acting course. I went for it was a course called Community Theatre Arts. So it was a diploma, not a degree. That matters to some people. It didn't matter to me. But what I liked about it was, I think, certainly the 2 years at sixth form, I'd had enough of academic education. So I didn't want to write any more essays or do any more studying like that. And although I had enough qualifications to get on the degree course, looking at the curriculum, it didn't really suit me. I felt with things like Guildford and Mount View was at the time was the place to do musical theatre if you wanted. But the Community Theatre Arts course, it was very different. So it was almost totally non-academic. So we had very little writing to do. We occasionally had to keep a diary or a record of where we were up to, occasionally submit work. But it wasn't essay-led and not academic. So it was a true vocational course in that it was almost entirely practical. And what we did was the theatre arts course, the degree course, was very formal, as you say, a little bit like RADA's formality at the time, where it's quite narrow and restricted, and you'll learn fencing and Shakespeare and so on. The Community Theatre Arts was much broader. We did all kinds of things, all those things, but it was much more approaching it from a kind of human interaction process. So although I'd done improvising and so on, that really taught me a lot. So instead of just working with an extant script, you devise, which one of my contemporaries described as writing backwards. So you start by improvising and then build it up, and then you build towards the script, which is then slightly formalized, but it's come from all of the actors and the director. So you build a production from ideas rather than being handed a script and a character, and then characters emerge out of it. And we had amazing guest tutors coming in, ones who worked with mask. We had musical training as well, musical instrument training, and did the traditional kind of vocal production work. But I had a good backing for that from Preston Drama Club. You know, some of the teachers of the student group over the years worked really well with us on vocal production, you know. So there are all kinds of rigors and experiences. It's a very broad course. And it, as I say, it was all practical. So there were no exams to sit. Basically, we had to get to the end of it. And if we made it, we were handed our diploma.
Brilliant.
And it was 3 years. It was hard work. And there were times where you think, am I doing the right thing, or can I act? Which is the only thing I knew when I came in. But by the time I got to the end of it, I felt good. I thought, right, what's going to happen now? And I mean, I'll talk more about this training as well if you want. But about 3 weeks before I left college, I'd put my photograph in Student Spotlight, Spotlight being the Actors magazine, a big book with everybody's photographs in it, and casting directors look through it, and directors and look for people. So I put that in, put my parents' contact details in, and I was given a call out of the blue from a company called Entertainment Machine, and I went to audition in North London, in Kilburn, into this guy's flat with his company partner, and got the job. And 2 weeks after I left college, I started my professional career. So that kind of really lifted me up in a very successful company, in a very successful fringe type show,
And was there a showcase at the end of Rose Bruford, or with it being a community as opposed to an acting course?
Yeah.
And what made you choose it? Was it particularly the academia side of the acting that you thought, I don't want to choose that, or did you audition for both and then be selected for one?
Yeah, I didn't audition for the acting degree course at Rose Bruford, but the other courses, there were varying degrees of practicality and academia in them. And I would have gone to anyone that gave me a place. You know, that's it. You can't be choosy. You know, I really didn't want to go to RADA at that point in time because of the restricted nature of what they were teaching. That's not really slagging off RADA or what they've done since or how they are now, but that was at the time. It just felt a bit too narrow for me, not for anybody else, you know. So I didn't apply there, but I applied for lots and got several auditions, as I've said.
And Rose Bruford is a beautiful establishment as well.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's fantastic. Yeah. The audition there, I really enjoyed it, and it wasn't the normal sort of drama college audition. At one point we were sat in the middle of a room and 30 students were in a semicircle in front of us, as well as the tutors, and they were grilling you, you know. It was quite, it was
wow. Well, there's a lot of that. I mean, that's part, they kind of break you down in order to make you. So there's
but I got so much from the course, and so many gifted tutors. They had a really good core staff. Stuart Bennett, who I mentioned earlier, was such a champion for us all, and amazing. Regarding me getting the place, so they put me on the reserve list, and then 2 weeks before term, Stuart Bennett rang me up and said, you've got a place, you start in 2 weeks. And obviously I didn't say I'll ring you back. I said, I'm coming, but in the phone call. But then I met a stumbling block because it was a vocational course rather than degree. We were very fortunate in that we didn't have to pay tuition fees or maintenance fees. We got grants. They were automatically granted back then. So it's your tuition is paid and accommodation and food essentially was paid. But because this was vocational, I didn't automatically qualify. So there was an officer at Lancashire County Council called Frank Bacon, and he controlled kind of drama and arts within Lancashire. There's a whole other story regarding Frank Bacon, but he rang me up and said, you've got a place at Rose Bruford. It's a last minute place. You clearly somebody's dropped out, so you're not good enough. You're simply not good enough. I want you to come and audition for me. So I had to go into the county hall and sit in a little tiny dark room waiting.
Goodness me, John.
And he didn't actually audition me, but he grilled me. I mean, he ripped me apart. He was he's long dead now, you know, but he was a dreadful man. And
so because you didn't get one of the initial places, is what I hear you're saying, somebody from Lancashire, in order for you to get the grant or whatever, said, right, you have to audition for me. And he was very strict, was he?
Yeah. Unpleasant. And so he didn't actually, in the end, he didn't make me do a piece or anything like that, but he just asked me some questions and then just kind of laid into me and said, you're clearly not good enough. Somebody dropped out. You shouldn't be getting the place. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ring Stuart Bennett. I know Stuart. I've known him for years. And I'm going to get him to call you back down to London and audition again and see whether you deserve the place. And I'm going, okay. And I went outside. My mum and dad had come with me and they were waiting outside. And I was kind of bewildered and I didn't know what to do. So we went home, and later that day, Stuart Bennett called me and said, I've just had Frank Bacon on the phone. I've known him for years. I've told him that you have the talent. You've passed your audition. I don't need you to come down to London again. You know, you don't need to spend all that money coming down to Rose Bruford. I don't need that. I've told Frank to just give you the grant and get on with it. So don't worry. You'll get your grant. And I got the confirmation 2 days later, the grant was through. Without that, I couldn't have dreamed of going to drama college, you know.
It's very expensive. It's very expensive.
I couldn't have taken out a loan, you know, or any of that. I found a way to live. And that's the problem, I think, now, isn't it? That with things like that, where they're considered more, people consider them to be not necessary.
Yes.
So you've got to pay for it. So fewer working class actors and people from lower and middle income backgrounds get to drama college. And you can be an actor, you can become a professional actor with nothing, no training, you get the job, you get the look or whatever, but the training is vital, I think, to give you the basis. And the fact that we're not just giving people places and grants is meaning that, as we've seen, you know, people from richer backgrounds are becoming successful actors, and the voice of the working class is getting lost, you know. And that was really vital for me, that I got the grant. It was a full grant, and that meant I could go to drama college without worries and find digs and eat and learn. And that's all I did for 3 years, you know, was go to drama college. It's often at university you're studying at home, or but certainly at Rose Bruford, it was 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. 5 days a week minimum. And then you would do evenings and weekends on top of that. And we had to be in college all the time. So it's very intense, you know. I know that people are doing that now and having to take jobs and bar jobs and so on to make ends meet. But I had the luxury, absolute luxury of I was a full-time student. And that was brilliant. And we've lost that. We really have, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
And how do you get out of Preston, you know, with no other discernible or practical skills, and you know, and get onto the ladder of acting? I don't know how you do it. I was very lucky.
Have you got any thoughts, John, as to how you could change that? Have you got any thoughts as to what you would implement or suggest?
I think we've got to find a way to get greater range of backgrounds into vocational and artistic courses. Rather, again, it's carrying on from the STEM thing, you know. Rishi Sunak recently said he wants to get rid of low value degrees. I can't remember, the phrase was something along those lines. You're thinking, what do you mean by that? And it's that thing, it's of crushing it in to, if you're not academic, you are of no value. Or, you know, it's very difficult to define what he meant, but you know it was not good and very restrictive, and it's damaging for the arts and for society, and ultimately for the economy, because what the arts brings is, following on from what I was saying earlier, is that it isn't necessarily that you're going to be an actor, but it brings creativity or confidence into things. You know, that's why drama in schools is important, because I think most actors actually are shy, but we find a way to present ourselves for auditions and into the world and represent and sell. But in essence, I'm a very shy person. That doesn't look evident at the minute, but that's how I've learned to do it. And
so it's your way of fundamental expression. And what we're losing all over across the spectrum really is the fundamental ability to express ourselves. And if we lose that, then we're losing all those wonderful additional skills that we have as human beings, where we're tactile, where we run around and we move and we're physical. We're not just sat static, which is the fastest way to an early grave, is to just sit still. You know. And we need to be using our brains as well, and creative abilities. I mean, most people sat in, you know, a particular job would look at you, John, and revel in what you've done and think, goodness me, I wish I'd had the opportunity or ability to do what John has done. So basically what I'm hearing from you, John, is we need to get some of the basic fundamentals back from the 1980s, perhaps, get the school system back into that sort of modus operandi as well, and then get people filtering from different backgrounds. I mean, we're talking about today, there's a lot of discussion in Parliament regarding diversity. Well, diversity separates us in some respects. The very word itself is there's one person like myself with a disability, there's somebody else with this, somebody else with that, but actually multiple diversity, which has to incorporate working class and levels of as you say, academia, but also levels of talent. So if we're going to be a multi-diverse world, then we also have to have a look at what you have brought to today's show as well, and incorporate different classes, abilities and talents, because that is multiple diversity. That is bringing everything to the table. So I really want to hear a little bit now about what springboarded you into the puppetry. So if we have a little look at that.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think I was saying earlier on that it was kind of an accident. A job had fallen through. I needed work quickly. Somebody rang me up, and I ended up starting a job with a puppet company. Not a very good show, not very good puppets, but the curiosity led me to apply for a job at Norwich Puppet Theatre. That I got the job, and it was brilliant, and it led to several years of work for me. And as an actor, you go where the work takes you, so you can talk about planning it or what you'd like to do next, but basically you take the next job, and as long as it doesn't compromise you, you just take the job. But the puppetry really expanded things for me. So I think in Britain, well, no, I know in Britain that we have a very poor view of puppetry, and we think however glorious they are in childhood of Sooty and Sweep. Certainly, I'd say our generations, they're still going, and Punch and Judy, and that's all that people see as puppetry. But the rest of the world, it's a respected art form. And working at Norwich Puppet Theatre was absolutely brilliant. They had a church converted into a theatre, amazing workshop with amazing craftspeople in it. And I did the show of the summer season in Norwich, and then toured for 9 months, did 176 performances.
And what was the production called?
It was called Fangs the Vampire Bat. And it was based on a Ted Hughes poem, and it's been adapted for Norwich Puppet Theatre. And the puppet style was the first thing that started to expand. So having worked with these really awful glove puppets, I was then working with these things there were a combination of rod and hand, they're called. So they're a little bit like Muppets, but you have a rod coming out, say, of an elbow, which you move, and your hand goes into the head, and there's a foam head like Muppets, and you talk like that. Beautifully made by a guy called Craig Denston, and the show adapted from this little-known Ted Hughes long poem by Simon Painter. Brilliant writer, brilliant director, and really hit it off with him. And then went on tour initially with a girl. She had some spinal problems, had to leave the tour, and then worked with another guy, sort of fed him into the show. We rehearsed and so on. Mostly touring around schools and art centres. Absolutely brilliant. And 13 characters each. The longest pause in the show, I ran off stage to come on the other side, put one puppet down, come on with another puppet, and my longest break was I had time to drink a bit of Lucozade and run on.
Bit of energy.
yeah, beautiful show, incredible characters, lovely script, and I toured with that, as I say, for 9 months, and I was getting. There was an option to renew for another 3 months, and various things had happened. And I sort of felt it was time to maybe leave, but I wasn't going to quit the job. And Simon, who'd written the show and directed the show, normally worked at Cannon Hill Puppet Theatre in Birmingham. And in fact, that's where I'd auditioned. And I was talking to him because we'd become friends. And he said, look, I've nearly finished the script. There's a range of parts for you in it. Come here. So I could quit at Norwich. I kept in touch with them and worked with them again. That relationship didn't end. But then I went to Cannon Hill Puppet Theatre, who at the time were one of the great puppet theatres of Britain. Really well respected, but not very widely known in Britain. One of the great people there, aside from Simon Painter, was it turned out Craig Denston, who'd made the Fangs puppet, was the workshop maker at Cannon Hill, but the workshop leader and artistic director was a man called John Blundell, who, if you were in Latvia or Estonia or South America, they go, oh, John Blundell, but not known here, even though he's the man that made Parker from Thunderbirds.
Is he?
Jerry Anderson.
Wow.
And made many key puppets, and he was a very unusual man, but absolutely brilliant at what he did. And he mostly carved the puppets out of softwood, and then used all kinds of different puppet forms. So having gone from this sort of rod and hand where they're a bit like Muppets, the show that I went into was called Giants, Witches and Fighting Men, written by Dave Arthur, who was the husband of Tony Arthur, who was on Playaway and Playdays and so on. He was a fantastic guy. But John Blundell created this show which had what were called totem puppets, and I'd never seen anything like this before. So we were on stage, there's no booth, we're not hidden, we're in a costume, and then the puppets, which you'll see photographs of, I think, in a little while. It was a single rod with a piece on top, which essentially were the shoulders, and a costume draped over that, and then this beautiful carved head. Now the show Giants, Witches and Fighting Men, it was based on the Mabinogion, which is the Welsh book of the Arthurian legends, and there are many tales within it, and ours was the tale of Culhwch and Olwen. So it's a very big storytelling piece, a very sort of Celtic feel to it. We had an amazing score written for us by a man called John Wolfe, who also worked in the music and composing department at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and came and worked for Cannon Hill for a pittance because he loved it and wrote this amazing music for us. But the puppets, it's very difficult to describe. So you have the rod in one hand, which you hold near the head, and your other arm is the puppet's arm, so you can articulate and move, so you can pick up objects and you can sword fight and do all kinds of things. Wow. And then you can seamlessly swap to the other hand, and just holding the puppet in front, and then we become invisible. The audience aren't looking at us anymore, they're looking at the puppet characters, and then we could put those down and become the narrators and so on. We had a parachute which was about a quarter of the set. So this parachute, we would dance with it, you know how you do parachute dancing, it's a wonderful thing, but lit, and then it would drop and it would become mountains or the sea and be lit beautifully and just incredible, you know, and towers which wheeled around, and they became castles, and then they became giants, and it was from the enormous to the tiny, incredibly beautiful. And the heads of the puppets, as I say, were carved from a single piece of wood with no moving parts. But the way John Blundell carved them, when you tilted the puppet head, it changed expression. It was just incredible. I mean, It was magical, you know, and it's a solid piece of wood. And you just do that, and the puppet looks sad or happy, and you can just alter it very subtly and change its emotion. That's the way it's carved and the way it's lit. It was extraordinary. One of the biggest things I've ever done. So from going from a tiny puppet booth with dreadful puppets going around Lancashire to Norwich Puppet Theatre with this big show and this long 9-month tour, going into a proper theatre in Midland Arts Centre in the middle of Cannon Hill Park, a lovely park near Edgbaston Cricket Ground in Birmingham, and a very successful company, schools coming in all week and shows at the weekend and so on. And a number of my friends came to see the show, and one of them, who's quite cynical, I would say, but loyal to me, afterwards he said, "This show isn't really for kids, is it?" You know, so it had got something for everybody. It was very silly, wonderful. And the magic, I think this is the magic of theatre. You can do it in so many ways with almost nothing. We had this beautiful scene where Culhwch, the hero, he has to go on quests to win the hand of Olwen, and he has to get the blood of this witch. The actor behind it was Lindsay Ryan, and she was amazing. And what you do is he comes with his act, and he splits her in two. She falls apart, and blood pours out, and the audience are going, adults and children alike. And the lighting, the music was tremendous and horrific. But when you analyze it, you've got this carved head of the witch, 2 pieces of wood, a hinge and a clip, and it falls out, and the blood is just red ribbons. But when you're in it, you don't see those elements, you just see the effect. But that's all it is, a hinge, 2 bits of wood and some red ribbons. and the audience were aghast. You know, that's the magic of theatre, you know, just little things like that. And how an actor can transform themselves on stage anyway, it's just a thrilling thing, you know. So it really brought us out as actors. Dave Arthur, who wrote the script, had written songs, but then John Wolfe, the composer, came in and worked on the tunes with us, and we were actors first, puppeteers second, and singers third. And the company liked to employ actors and to train them in puppeteering, because you often got a better performance. There are fantastic puppeteers with amazing skill who can act, and I'm not denigrating them, but the nature of these shows, and I worked for the company off and on for a while, it was performance based. But John Wolfe, the composer, came in and knew we weren't singers, but we got us singing 4-part harmonies a cappella, and we sounded brilliant. And we weren't. It was composing and then the training and the directing, and he made us sound good. There were wonderful little tricks that he did. There were 2 big shows that did: Giant Switches and Fighting Men, and Pinocchio and the Golden Key. And he would play this music, in this atmospheric music, and the last note was the keynote as a drone, and it would fade out, and then it would sound like we'd all come in perfect harmony without any cue. It was genius, as if we'd just been able to pitch. Pinocchio and the Golden Key, I played the character Papa Carlo, who's the Geppetto character. It was a strange adaptation, a Russian version of Pinocchio set in a castle with a degree of communism in it, translated into English and made into a popular show. But I opened it and I'm carving a piece of wood and I start to sing, and I was really worried about, again, a cappella. So John came in and he said, right, this is the music that's playing before the show. This is your tune disguised, so the audience won't recognize it, but in the wings you can hear it. And then when you come onto the stage and sit on the bench, the last note you hear, the piano just goes down, just playing your tune gently for you. The last note is your keynote, and then I start singing. And I'm not a singer, and it was fantastic. And that's the craft of everybody coming together and everybody understanding it, and the joie de vivre we had as a company. You know, great group of actors and
how many, John? How many people were in the cast, John?
4 on stage, although again, often the audiences are going, we're thinking there's many more of us. You know, the Fangs the Vampire Bat, there were only 2 of us performing, and at the end of the show in the primary school we do a Q&A, and often the head teacher would go, how many puppeteers do you think there were? They'd occasionally ask us to wait behind the scenes, and they go 5, 6, and then 2 of us would come out and they go, what? So 4 actors on stage, then we had a stage manager, lighting and sound for every performance, and then there was the puppet making workshop where 2 guys were fully employed, obviously an administrator to run the company. You don't see her, but you can't do it without her, you know what I mean, running the company and promoting the show and making sure we get paid and all that sort of thing.
What do you think is the essence of puppetry in particular, John? What do you think today, because we don't see a lot of puppeteering today, which I think is another loss to the genre of theatre as well. Obviously in musical terminology, you've got, people would understand Avenue Q, which is a brilliant sort of, as you say, the conventional puppets. But what I loved about the puppets you've described, and as I say, there'll be photographs a little later, they're very unique, carved, and just a very, very specific style. What do you think is the benefits of puppetry across the board that perhaps we could bring back?
Well, I do think it's once again a lost art. Norwich Puppet Theatre is still going. Cannon Hill Puppet Theatre were edged out in management changes at Midland Arts Centre. This is my opinion solely, but it was that point where arts administrators were coming in, finding their own salary and not having money to pay the artists. So when I arrived, there was circus arts going in the building. There was a cinema as well. There were various workshops going, artists creating in all the genres, Cannon Hill and so on, as well as touring productions coming in. And within a year or so of me doing my last show there were no artists employed in the building anymore. They were buying in shows. So they had all these workshops. I don't know what happened ultimately, but workshop rooms, physical workshops, as well as practical workshops going on. And they basically turned at that point into a receiving house, and no artists were employed. Where when we're working on a show, we're employed full-time, paid full-time, contract to contract. But there were people who worked there, like Simon and the director, and John and Craig in the puppet workshop. That was their full-time job. And after, I think it was, I can't remember, something like 27 years of the company, they were basically edged out because they couldn't find the money anymore, because there are more salaries to protect at management level. That's my opinion on
right. But so how would you change that? How, if you had a voice, which you do, John, if you have a strong voice on how that would change, what do you think could be implemented? Could we introduce this into schools, for example? Is this something that we should bring back, do you feel?
Well, things like puppetry, I think, because you asked me about that specifically, it can be used in education in all sorts of ways. I mean, it is used, in kind of very difficult situations, working with children who may have been abused and so on. But it's puppetry, but you can do things with that and make things explainable and understandable. But what you can do with puppetry that maybe some people might struggle with acting is that the puppet becomes the other, so you can put things through the puppet. So looking at it from an education perspective, a child could express through a puppet in a way that they can't perhaps to themselves, or doing an improvisation as themselves. So it's harder for some people to get away from themselves, but with a puppet, it becomes another thing. And that's why, the old tradition of ventriloquists, dummies, they say things that are outrageous and unacceptable, but it's not the ventriloquist saying them. And the same for children. You can play. I mean, we've lost play in education, I think, in a lot of places. Not every school, and I know people are doing great work, schools where they're doing music and acting and so on, but we need to play more as part of education. But again, if you say take a history class, instead of just reading the books and learning the dates, you act out scenes, you explore things. And again, you could do that with puppetry as well, and just fire people's creative brains, and those that can't learn just off the page or can't do the sums or whatever it is, just finding different ways to explain. And puppets are a great thing because they're another tool. And as I say, they can be separate from you, so you can express through them, perhaps in a way that you can't yourself, and build confidence.
That's magic. So what I'm hearing you say is that in the teaching system itself, that could be something, because visual arts, we are all, whatever our backdrop, drawn to visuals. And if you've just got the stereotypical teacher that's doing the same thing day in, day out, drawing on visual arts, masks, physical theatre, all this, the wealth of things that you studied at Rose Bruford, costumes, as you said about the lighting, you said the parachute, there are parachute games in schools and things like that, where again, it's laughter. One of the things that has been drenched, I think, from society is joy, because what I'm hearing from you, and when you were expressing yourself, you were in the moment, you were in a joyous position, and that is what theatre brings. It brings a sense of pure joy. So it doesn't matter what label we're given in terms of our, abilities and subjects. We all have multiple, as they say, diverse abilities as well, and we need to tap into all of them, all the senses. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's covering everything. It's the pressure to hit the league table. I know a 6-year-old who was mentally crippled at the time because they realized they were having to do an exam, and even if you shouldn't know it at that age. If you're being assessed, you shouldn't know it. There should be no pressure, and they become valueless, in my opinion, because everybody's got to get them. We've got to get on the lead table, got to pass, and the parents will go to another school, and it's too much. So it isn't about learning. It's about the answer and passing the exam and getting on the league table. And you can't undervalue play as learning. And fun is undervalued for children and for adults, you know.
Yes.
This is why I'm very happy to say I've done a lot of comedy in my career. You know, as an actor, it's good if you get the emotive role and you go through all that, but it's easy. It's easy. Whatever people tell you, you know, you look at the performances that win Oscars. That's something everybody can see rather than theatre, which most people don't. The comedy actors don't win. It's much harder. I mean, it's I say that I love comedy and it's easy for me, but it's dead easy to emote and, you know, look like you're going through angst and so on. There's much more technique and background to be able to make somebody laugh, and I place high value on it. It isn't boasting. If you've got a gift and you can make people laugh and just make other people be silly as well, you bring people out of themselves. Even
you do.
And you go, oh right, yeah, I can. You know,
it's your Gracie Fields of today. It's your somebody to take you out of the seriousness, because we're hitting a junction, aren't we? Like at Cuthbert Main, where it was like a tunnel. Walk on the right, not the left. My goodness, if you accidentally went the wrong way. But you're absolutely right. We're getting a little bit too strict and formal, and we need to perhaps rethink everything and start again with a fresh approach, with, you know, listening to people like yourself, which is a breath of fresh air, somebody who you know, has gone through lots and lots of different things in the life, but also brought that to the stage and embodied. I love the fact that you did community theatre and not just the pure acting, because that has a wealth of expression within it and is sometimes overlooked in the industry, to you know, and what you bring to the children, as you say, in particular, lighting up the faces, because children love visual arts, they love mask work, and they also want to learn how to do it. So it isn't just watching, because again, that's sitting and watching. Children want, as you quite rightly said, they want to play, they want to join in circus skills, they want to juggle, they want to sword fight, they want to do all of these different you know, hybrids of theatre. And so you yourself, you also played Shakespearean lead roles as well. And on top of that, tell us a little bit about your directing, John, if that's okay.
Yes, I'd love to. Well, I think I had initially, when I was a teenager and when I arrived at drama college, I was an actor, just an actor. That was certainly enough, and it was an absolute certainty. With the community theatre arts course at Rose Bruford, because it was broader and we were devising and writing, we would interact and direct and so on as we went along. So I started to get an interest definitely in script writing and directing there, though it's sort of within a limited parameter. But when I left drama college, having got my first job, as I said, going up to the Edinburgh Fringe, getting paid a wage, which anybody that knows about the Edinburgh Fringe, people usually put their own money into it. So I was with a successful theatre company, getting paid and playing full houses. And then we went on a national tour, went to Northern Ireland, all over. Then that job came to an end. And that's the second point in my life where I went, oh, right, okay, what happens now? It isn't handed you onto a plate, you know. I'd say, oh, my career started and now it's ended.
There's a lot of that in acting.
But then you learn that that's how it happens. But what I've always had, I'll answer the question, but it doesn't matter whether it's right or not. I've always had faith in myself, and I've always believed I would get the next job, and I always have. And that's whatever else is happening around you, health, diversity, diverse problems. So I always knew, but there was a pause. So I started working for the youth service, running a video studio, which was great work, and kind of educating young people how to use and make videos, use equipment to make videos. And within that, I had some time, and we put together a theatre company called Chilling Tales Theatre Company, and we did spoof versions of horror plays and stories, which we wrote ourselves. There were 3 of us principally. We brought in more people as we went along, and so then we were 3 actors, writers and directors, and we worked collectively like that. And that's when I thought, this directing's really good, and I felt I could do it. So we took Chilling Tales up to the Edinburgh Fringe. This time we put in our own money, and I wasn't getting paid a wage, but it was fantastic to do it, and we sort of built up an audience. We were not the most nor least successful Fringe act that's ever been, but everybody that came loved it. Fantastic comedy and very silly. So from there, I then went, you could say, back into the acting career and various roles and different companies and so on. But that had certainly given me the taste for directing and writing. So I would write things as I went along, sometimes perform, sometimes not. I through all of that acting, I took a side route where, having been to the Edinburgh Fringe 3 times, I set up Preston Theatre Festival back in the 80s, and we tried to do a sort of Fringe type thing back then. We had a few years of doing that. And that sort of gave me a sort of production side of things as well. So as the acting career went on, I was looking for more directing opportunities, and theatre that I worked at quite a lot, that I mentioned earlier. Initially, I started as an actor, but then an opportunity came up to direct there, and I took it, and that led to quite a number of acting jobs that and my directing career was really kind of taking off. Actually, in some ways, slightly more than the acting career. But and again, how things start, you never quite know where you're going. I'm quite happy to say unemployed, not resting. I don't use those euphemisms. Other people can. And the director at iTheatre gave me a call and said, John, we've got a problem. The director is not working on the show, and we start rehearsing tomorrow. Are you free? Can you do it? And 23 hours later, I was in the directing chair.
Brilliant. So can you see how you're dependable? These are qualities that people who are coming up the ranks, it's not just about talent, it's about being dependable, timeous, reliable, all of those qualities as well, John, that you have.
I think that's it. You know, and this is absolutely frank, I'm not the best actor in the world. I'm not the worst, but I am a good company member. So I work with people as equals. And that's often why I've got re-employed by companies. And a lot of my career was the same companies until they stopped existing for funding reasons, you know. So then you have to find new companies. So it is, I think, being a team player is really important in any job or occupation or whatever, but particularly so in theatre. And what I liked when I got the directing career going, and I worked for companies like Vienna's English Theatre in Vienna, was that directing brought together everything else I'd learned. So back at the Preston Drama Club days of painting the set and sawing bits up and you know, lighting and sound and everything, if you don't know about all of those things, you can't be a totally effective director. I've worked with directors who esoterically knew their directing job, but they didn't understand everything. So what made me a good director was that I am an actor. So if I asked an actor to do something, I know I've done it or can do it. You know, I know what it's like from the inside. If I ask the stage management team to make something, I've got an idea of how it might be made or what I'm asking or what it costs. And it's bringing all that together.
I think that's the essence of you, John. I think it's beautiful talking with you, because you do talk about, you know, all the layers of theatre, which not everybody's aware of. And again, that's why it's so important to continue to have opportunities in the theatre, from stage management to props to costumes to lighting to front of house, all integral parts that make up the actual theatre. Not everybody wants to perform, but when they go to places that do community theatre, they get these grand opportunities to write as well, to self-devise work, to improvise.
Absolutely,
You know, all these other subsets that are from the pivotal world of entertainment, and you've highlighted today some magical elements that you've worked within. And I just want to bring you also, before we close, I want to bring you forward to today, John. Health-wise, have you been in good spirits through your life? Have you been quite lucky and blessed in that respect, or have you had any sort of stumbles or circumstances that have impeded your performance and directing work?
Yeah, well, my career was going very well. I liked the career I had. Other people might go, that's a bit rubbish, but I was very happy. I was very happy indeed. And then I was moving into this directing sphere, and the jobs I was getting was slightly bigger and slightly more high profile. That's not the only measure, but I was thinking, oh, this is going to take off. And then I developed ulcerative colitis, which is a bowel disorder related to Crohn's disease, which more people have heard of. And the bowel becomes inflamed. I won't go into graphic detail, but it's very difficult to live, to exist when it's inflamed. So that has interrupted my life since it first came out, and made things more difficult to sustain, certainly the acting career, and for a while brought the directing career to a halt as well. So that was a big change in my life. And
when was this, John? So was this in recent years, or?
No, it was 2004, so it's 20 years ago. So it's had a big impact. However, that hasn't stopped my career totally, or stopped me acting or directing or writing or whatever, but it certainly has it, because it's one of those conditions that flares up from time to time and then goes into remission with treatment, and you can't always control you can't control how and when it's going to happen. For different people, it's different things. It's been in the news lately because they've discovered that one of the genetic markers in it, which they believe will be able to treat the genetic aspect with medication, which is a world breakthrough, but it'll be 5 years before human testing and another 5 years before it filters down to people like myself. And that could well be a game changer. But what I've done with that is still get on with my life. So while I might not be able to do an acting job at that particular time, the creative side cannot go away for me. So you have to find ways through it. So one of the things that I did, I've been a musician since I was at drama college. That's where I started to play keyboards and so on. So over 40 odd years, I've developed this studio and built it up. So what keeps me going in between acting or directing or writing is the music, and that's where the creative side comes out. So I always have to be creating, and I think everybody should have creativity in their lives, but I'm lucky in that it's innate within me. So the music is a very sustaining, therapeutic and nurturing factor, and it's just great to be able to compose in a home studio, project studio, where you can create amazing pieces of music, both with the computer that sits under my desk, and as I said before, actual real instruments and so on.
It looks amazing. And what would you use the music room for? What what products are you creating for? Are you using it within theatre realm and things like that?
Yeah, I've composed for theatre, including productions. I directed production of The Tempest, Shakespeare's The Tempest, and wrote the score as if it was a film soundtrack, and we had a quadraphonic sound and so on. So that was all created in my studio, and I've written for other productions as well.
So are you the new John? You know, the one who did all of the Superman and all that. Are you the new John?
Yes, I suppose I am, really. But but often if I'm directing a show, I will find ways to. I'll always look at the musical aspect of it anyway. But if I can then add some of my own music into it, I'll take that opportunity, because as director you're in charge, you know. So I always say as a director, I'm a semi-benign dictator. So I want to know what people think. I involve them. Everybody feels they're a part of it. But ultimately, I'm in charge. But what I don't do is put people down or denigrate them. I did a show, Hansel and Gretel, and at iTheatre, we were in the theatre and in the castle in the open air, and I got a young stage manager. We often there work with people who are starting their career, often working with younger actors or recent graduates. And this girl, she'd just come out of learning technical theatre and was working. Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, she came to do the show. I was teaching her as we went along. Very good, absolutely fantastic. Learned everything. And as I always do when I directed a show, the day after, the actors can rest and sleep. But I'd take the stage manager out for lunch and we have a chat and see how things are going, you know. And I went out and she was so lovely. She'd worked so hard and learnt very quickly, brought her own things to it. And she said, what amazed me in rehearsal, she said, this guy, this director that I worked for, he was in charge and he shouted at everybody and shouted for everything. And she said, you didn't shout once at anybody and you got everything you wanted. So it's how you motivate people. It's very easy to be the boss and in charge and put people down, but I want everybody to feel that they've done it themselves, and they have. But it's that. But equally, if I want something, I know how to get it as a director without making them feel bad, because you've got to, you know, there's deadlines and you've got to get things done and move people along. But it's the approach to it, and it's all about collaboration and working with people. And
well, I think that's the essence of you, John, and I'm so sad that we have to draw it to a close, because I'm sure we could have at least had another hour. I think it's absolutely wonderful to speak with you, and hopefully we'll get you back on as a guest in the future as well. It's been an absolute pleasure, John, talking to you, and I think that's exactly it. So the positive things that I want you to leave us with, one last sentence that summarizes what changes perhaps you'd like ahead and what things are in the future. You know, that can entice people to go back to the way things were and bring more of that into the world. Have you got one last sort of statement on that, John?
Yeah, well, I think everybody should go back to going to the theatre. Cinema's great, TV's great, but go to the theatre and see live shows, and then find your own creativity from that and get involved. Go to a drama group or a choir or whatever, or go to a maker's place, and there are loads of those things at the moment. If we can get back to creativity and creative thinking, and from my point of view, start by going to the theatre and then build out from there, and be creative. I think that's
fantastic. Well, what a celebration of your life today, John, and we wish you all the best with your health ahead as well, and most importantly, keep being wonderful you, because what a plethora of life and practical skills, including the puppetry, you brought to the podcast today. And thank you, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you today. Thank you so much to the brilliant John Hickey. Thank you, John.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.